Welcome to the Ghost Story Grandma channel. Today, Grandma will bring you a mysterious and eerie tale. Get ready for it. Ghost Story, creepy stories for a long, arduous, and disturbing night. A quiet road cuts through the pine forests of northern Oregon. Drizzle blurs the windshield, making the streetlights appear as faint, flickering orbs in the dense fog. A small roadside cafe emerges, its dim yellow lights barely piercing the mist. Outside, an old wooden sign hangs from a rusted chain, its name long faded with time. Inside, the cafe has only a few patrons, mostly long-haul truckers. A young woman with long black hair, clad in a leather jacket, sits near the window, slowly flipping through the pages of an old book. Across from her, a young man wearing a baseball cap pulled low scans the menu, though he doesn't seem to truly read it. The woman speaks first. "Anything new?" The man smirks, a dry smile. "Same as always, someone's gone missing again." No one in the cafe pays them any mind, except for a server behind the counter. His gaze lingers for a moment on the old newspaper beside the woman, where a bold headline stands out, "3 missing on Silver Pine Trail. No trace found." Outside, an old truck pulls up. The driver steps in, his coat soaked from the rain. He glances around the cafe, then shudders slightly as his eyes drift toward the window. The woman turns, her gaze unconsciously following his. Out there, beyond the thin veil of rain, something is standing in the dark, watching. The woman looked out the window but saw nothing beyond the heavy rain. Droplets streaked down the glass, distorting everything outside into shifting, warped shapes. The truck driver was ordering coffee, his voice rough and gravelly. Across from her, the young man flipped the old newspaper, its yellowed pages rustling softly. They said nothing more until the server filled the woman's coffee cup. He leaned down slightly, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Someone just found a backpack on Silver Pine Trail. Caked in mud, the zipper torn open as if something had ripped it apart. No other signs." The young man raised an eyebrow. They already searched that area. If something was left behind, they would have found it. The server reached into his apron and pulled out a photograph, setting it on the table. The image showed the backpack lying abandoned among rotting leaves. Next to it, a crumpled piece of paper. The handwriting was rushed, uneven, almost unreadable. 3 words. "Don't look back." The woman traced a finger along the edge of the photograph, then slipped it into her jacket pocket. They left the cafe soon after. The old car rolled down the muddy road, tires crunching against wet gravel. Neither of them spoke during the drive. By the time they reached the entrance to Silver Pine Trail, the rain had eased, but the air remained heavy. Moisture rose from the ground, forming a thin mist that curled around the trees. They parked, checking their flashlights, knives, and radios. The woman pulled her jacket tighter around her and stepped onto the muddy path, leaving deep footprints behind. The young man followed close behind. The forest was silent, except for the squelching of boots in the damp earth. Their flashlight beams skimmed over moss-covered trunks and skeletal branches, reaching like gnarled fingers into the darkness. About 10 minutes in, they arrived at the clearing where the backpack had been found. The flashlight beams swept over the damp ground, nothing but fallen leaves and a patch of freshly disturbed earth. The woman crouched down, pressing her fingers into the damp soil. A sudden click echoed from the radio. No one touched it. The young man quickly checked his own radio. It was still on standby, no incoming signal. The woman narrowed her eyes at the darkness between the trees. A shadow moved, just at the edge of the flashlight's reach. They shot to their feet, beams cutting through the space where something had been. But there was nothing. Wind picked up, rustling the branches in a long, whispering sigh. The radio crackled again, static blending with something else. A voice, soft, distorted, coming from somewhere far away. They exchanged a glance. The woman reached into her pocket, pulling out the photograph the server had given her. There was something on the back, a faint line of writing in smudged pencil. She hadn't noticed it before. "Still here." The girl flipped over the back of the photo, the writing smudged, as if someone had hurriedly scribbled it down and then rubbed over it. The boy stared at the radio, the static still present, mixed with a faint sound, something like breathing or a very soft muttering. They decided to leave their current spot, following the narrow path through the forest. The flashlight beams swept over the tree canopy, but the thick darkness swallowed everything beyond their reach. The air was cold, devoid of any sound from insects or animals. About 50 meters ahead, a fallen tree blocked the path. Its branches were shattered, the breakage fresh. The girl crouched down, pressing her hand against the damp bark. Something had brought it down. It wasn't the wind. The radio let out a loud screech before falling silent. The boy tried adjusting the frequency, but it no longer worked. The girl glanced around, her eyes settling on a deep, smooth indentation on the tree trunk, as if something with claws had raked across it. They continued forward, more cautious than before. A short while later, an old cabin emerged ahead of them. Its wooden walls were rotting, the roof sagging heavily, and the front door trembled slightly with each gust of wind. There was no light inside. The girl stepped onto the porch, feeling the wooden floorboards shift slightly beneath her weight. The boy checked the window, but saw nothing but darkness. They pushed the door open, and a musty scent mixed with something more unpleasant filled the air. The floor was littered with mud and dried leaves. In the center of the room stood a small table. Resting on it was an old notebook, its spine nearly falling apart. The first page bore a few hastily scrawled lines. 3 people, 1 tent. That night there were footsteps. By morning, only 2 remained. The next page had been torn out. As they flipped through the remaining pages, all they found were short, fragmented notes. There is something in the woods. It never goes far. The boy turned back toward the window. The forest outside was pitch black. A branch swayed slightly, though the wind had gone still. The boy stepped toward the window, his eyes fixed on the darkness between the trees. There was nothing but layered shadows and unsettling silence hanging in the air. The girl flipped through the notebook, its rough pages damp to the touch. Some of them were faded, the scrawled writing hurried and uneven. They can't escape. It's everywhere. The next page was torn in half, leaving only a few scattered words. The radio emitted a faint sound, a weak, crackling static. The boy tried adjusting it again, but no clear signal came through. The girl set the notebook down and glanced toward the door. The air felt heavier than before. They decided to inspect the cabin more thoroughly. Along the base of the walls, streaks of mud stretched in long, uneven lines. A corner of the floor had been disturbed. Wooden planks warped and lifted, exposing the dirt beneath. The girl crouched down, running her fingers along the edge. The soil underneath was still fresh. The boy shone his flashlight into the gap. A crumpled piece of fabric was buried in the dirt, its color nearly faded away. The girl carefully pulled it free. It was a jacket, the sleeve torn, the zipper broken. Something hard was tucked inside. As they opened it, a small knife tumbled onto the wooden floor. The blade was rusted, the wooden handle worn and scratched. The girl picked up the knife, the cold metal biting against her fingertips. The boy scanned the room again, his gaze stopping on a long scratch running across the door. It didn't look like something made by human hands. Outside, the trees rustled, though there was no wind. A branch snapped with a faint, brittle crack. The radio crackled again. This time, buried within the static, a voice whispered, faint, fragmented, almost impossible to make out. They stood still for a few seconds. Then the cabin door trembled. The cabin door trembled in short, steady beats. The boy tightened his grip on the knife, stepping backward. The girl held her breath, eyes locked on the radio. The static was fading, replaced by a faint, broken voice. Help! Outside, there was nothing. No footsteps, no breathing, just silence. The boy signaled to the girl. They didn't wait. The girl pushed open the back door. It wasn't locked. Darkness spilled in from the forest. Without hesitation, they bolted, racing toward the path they had come from. Then, the radio crackled one last time. Don't look back.